When we were driving, the altimeter here wasn't, it's supposed to be at 14. It was just below 14, and then it'd go back. And that was an indication that we had a problem with our voltage regulator. So on some alternators, they have a voltage regulator in the alternator. And sometimes, you know, you go change your alternator thinking you fixed the problem and you haven't. And in this case, the voltage regulator is in the computer, in the ECM or back there. So when it's starting to fail, fix for this is to install a external voltage regulator. And that's what I've done down in there, is I've bolted it to the inner fender well in behind the coolant jug here. And I ran our wiring in. I'm going to splice it into the fuse block and then hook it onto the back of the alternator down there. There's 2 bolts to remove the alternator, one at the top and one at the bottom. And those are both 15 millimeter. And then we've got this piece on the back here, and I wrote down 10 millimeter on either side, here and here, and then 7 millimeter for the 2 here. And we got to remove this piece. We're going to remove that, and we're going to kind of seal up these connections, and then we're going to hook up our new connections here. This is the ground, the black one is the ground, that can go here, and these two apparently don't have to be in any particular order. They can be on either end as long as they both hook onto here. Once we've disconnected our positive wires off of the terminal here, we can pull off this bottom part of the fuse block, and the wires are coming in there, and you'll just, all these little tabs, you'll loosen them all off, and you'll pull that off to access the bottom side. Notice under here that this is a plate. I don't know if you can see that. There's a metal plate in there. That metal plate is running down the center of all them large fuses, and these 4 here down the center, and that is your positive. These are the 2 fuses at the end that don't share that common positive feed. It comes back, the power comes back through the large wire, the blue and gray here, and on this one it'll be the orange and yellow. And then the circuit side for this one is the red and gray, and the circuit side for this one is the orange wire. This is the fuse panel underneath the hood, and our battery positive is coming in. It's feeding all of these large fuses down the center. It also comes over and it feeds these 4 fuses down the center as well. We want to look at fuse 18. It's a 15 amp. And 18. The circuit is the orange wire, and it goes to the ignition switch, output, start and run. If we look at our system here, we've got the battery positive coming into that fuse block, and it's going to fuse 8, which is coming down, and it's feeding our ignition. And then it's returning back with a dark blue gray. It's coming up to that fuse 18. And then circuit side is orange wire. So we're back in here. We've soldered in spliced in an orange wire, and we're going to run it with the loom that comes out of underneath out of the fuse block, and we're gonna check that and see if we can connect our switched power to that wire. Let's get a little schematic here on the wiring. So we've got the alternator, we've got the voltage regulator. These two wires, the bottom here, it doesn't matter which one hooks onto where, because they're both connected anyways, like in that little square there, rectangle. But the top one for the voltage regulator needs to go to a switched power, so it gets spliced off to a switched power. The green one just goes to here, and then you want to have a ground from the alternator to the voltage regulator. So the big thing here is going to be to find our switched power to splice this into. So what I did was, I'm looking in the book here, and the factory manual is kind of showing our diagram here for battery positive to the alternator, and then grounded out. And then these are those two wires that red and green in our picture over there. But these are the wires that would go to the power control module. So right here it said dark green orange. So I looked up here, I find automatic shutdown relay, and then I go back and I find automatic shutdown relay here in the fuse block, and I spliced into that green orange wire. That's what I'm using for my switched power. Originally I wanted to go here. I thought that I could use fuse 18 or fuse 21, but I just decided to go with the original factory wiring. If that's what it was here, that's what I'm going to use. I spliced some wires out of the fuse block here. I took this apart, turned it upside down, and I spliced in some wires. Originally I wanted to go with this, the gray and red one, and then there's this orange one here, and then ultimately I decided to go with the orange and green. So with the vehicle shut off, we've got our test light on here, and we check. So the orange doesn't have any power, the orange and green doesn't have any power, and we don't have any power with that one either. Now notice with the key in the ignition, but it's not turned to anything, the key is just simply in the ignition, we now have power on the red gray, so that's no good for us. And the orange green is still nothing, and the orange is still nothing. Now we're going to go turn it to accessory. Now with the accessory on, we'll check again. We've got power again on the red gray. We don't have anything on the green orange, and we have power on the orange. So I don't believe that the orange was a good choice as I originally thought. So we turn the vehicle on, and we should have our power, which is, there's no power on the orange green right now, but when we turn the vehicle on, there'll be power there, and this is the one we've selected for the voltage regulator switched power. Now we've got the vehicle running, we're going to try that orange green, and we got our power. So that's the one we're going to use. We still have power to the orange, and we have our power to the gray-red. Notice that before we hook in the green-orange wire, we don't have any charging going on the battery. Now with that wire hooked up, we've got the battery being charged at 14.6, and we've got our meter hooked up, red to positive, black to negative, and we're on direct current again. We'll go in and we're going to check the gauge on the Jeep. You can see now that the gauge is reading above 14. I'll show you the voltage regulators and maybe we can make some sense of that too. You can see that we got 4.58. We want the red lead on the ignition and the black lead on the field. And the research that I had said that our reading should be 1.75, I believe. So full disclosure here is that I hooked it up as we had illustrated, and I was still having some trouble. And it turned out that I had a bunch of bad voltage regulators. And then when I pulled the readings off of my other ones, I got kind of numbers all over the place. But I had 3 that were kind of consistent with, anywhere from 6. And the one that I put in the Jeep ended up being 7 point something. So I just chose it because it was the largest number, and I believe that's why we've got the higher voltage charging rate on there. I think if I put one of these ones in there, it might drop it down to that 14.3 or in around there. This one here, I'm suspecting, I don't know, it might not be any good either. I haven't put it in to see what it would be charging at. But these ones here, we've got 0.9 on this one, and these other ones I didn't even get a reading on. 1.15 on this one, and these 2 didn't have a reading. So I guess just throwing that out there, when you're doing something like this and at first it doesn't seem like it's you made this modification to your Jeep, you're starting to get a little bit freaked out because it's not working. Go back, go over it again, check your hardware, find out where the problem is, and keep after it until you get it.